Okay, we're off for our second semi-final round. I say semi-final, these are the only rounds we have. You could just say the rounds of the Uromigos Cup. We've got two teams, one from New York, one from Cleveland. One team's come in fancy dress, which incidentally wasn't encouraged. And I think, Tony, should they lose a mark for fancy dress?
We should gain a mark.
Yes, so they've lost a mark before we start for fancy dress, or not.
Who thinks we should lose a mark or gain a mark?
I've put Tony Chueri in charge of Tony's in charge of the scoring system, which is not without its risks. It's like putting an arsonist in charge of the fire brigade. But there we are. That's the decision that we've made.
It's interesting just for just
That's a great decision.
Points.
So we're going to kick off if we can. It's exactly the same as last time. For those who are watching who weren't here last night, there are essentially about 6 questions. It's going to last about half an hour. There's an initial question, which is a verbal question, and whichever team buzzes in and answers that initial question first, they then get control of the rest of that question, which you can get up to 6 points for. And so that's 6 marks and 6 questions, 36 marks, I guess, is a maximum. The other team can question and cause some points and score some points in a two-way dialogue. Tony, as I said, is going to help me with that because yesterday my marking wasn't very efficient. Neither was the buzz-around decision. Or fair. And in fact, the whole thing was a disaster. If you go back and watch, you'll see how badly it went. There we are.
All right.
Okay, here we go. This is the first question. Which cancer did Bob Marley die from? What type of cancer did Bob Marley die from?
Pancreatic.
Melanoma. Melanoma of the big toe. I mean, how unlucky is that?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a tricky question.
Really sad note.
Well, okay. I mean, not all the questions are like that.
Tom,
Yeah.
can we take 3 points out from Team New York? 3 points minus 3, no?
So here we go. This is the first question, Tony. It's at the end, only the end. So we got a press release in the top right-hand corner of the Ambassador 250 study. And the Ambassador 250 study is adjuvant pembrolizumab in high-risk urothelial cancer. In design, it's quite similar to 2 previous trials, 274, that Matt was involved with and led. It was positive for PFS. We haven't seen the OS yet. And that's led to an FDA approval, and the atezolizumab study, which was negative. On the left is the PFS signal, which was for nivolumab. And on the right is the OS signal for atezolizumab. If these were the results, you don't have to buzz, you've got control of the question. But I love the enthusiasm. I think that's an extra point, Tony.
It's a jersey.
So here we go. If these were the results, would pembrolizumab become the standard of care? So PFS is good, but no OS.
Yes, because nivolumab became the standard of care based on PFS alone.
So you don't think overall survival, therefore, is important?
It's important, but the question is different.
You can't. It's not your question, Matt. Tony, can you take marks off his team?
I thought the questions had right or wrong answers.
No, not all have right or wrong answers. So
It's important, but the approval does not always depend on what's ultimately important.
So PFS is okay in this setting?
For approval, yes.
Which 2 studies in the adjuvant setting are prospectively exploring ctDNA analysis? No. Extra marks again for Shilpa. Shilpa, fire away.
IMvigor 011 and modern trials.
And can you describe what those 2 trials look like?
So the IMvigor 011 is for high-risk bladder cancer patients who have ctDNA positive and they're randomized to atezolizumab versus placebo. And the modern study is, regardless of ctDNA, if they're positive, they're randomized to nivolumab and LAG-3 versus nivolumab. And if they're ctDNA negative, then surveillance versus nivolumab.
By Matt Gelsky.
Yeah, so that's absolutely right.
That's gotta hurt.
Fabulous answer.
That's gotta hurt.
Fabulous answer. Which of these ongoing phase 3 neoadjuvant immune-based trials in muscle-invasive bladder cancer are most likely to be positive for OS?
No.
So Shilpa, I think it might be you again. So here, in this setting for the audience, we've basically got two groups of studies, one in cisplatin eligible, where neoadjuvant chemotherapy is the standard of care, and in that environment, we're randomizing new combinations, either chemotherapy, platinum-based chemotherapy, plus immune checkpoint inhibitor versus chemotherapy alone. We've also got studies with enfortumab vedotin and pembrolizumab versus chemotherapy, and in the cisplatin ineligible space, we're going against cystectomy alone because there's no neoadjuvant therapy proved. And there are trials basically for Durva, Tremi, EV, a triplet trial, and there's also EV Pembro. And so, Shilpa, what's the answer to your question? Which trial do you think is going to be most positive, and which chemotherapy, and are the chemotherapy trials going to be positive?
You don't need a buzzer.
I think yes, the chemotherapy trials and the Pembro EV trial will be positive for the cisplatin eligible. And for cisplatin ineligible, all of them will be positive because the comparator is really bad.
Okay. Okay. And so, Matt, Mike, your team, but Matt probably knows a little bit of. Do you want to just talk about what you think is going to happen with these trials?
Matt's going to address. Yeah, I agree. I think they're all going to be positive.
For OS?
For OS. I think the cis-ineligible trials are definitely going to be positive for OS.
Yes.
And I think the cis-eligible trials are likely to be positive for OS.
There's a bonus point here, Tony, important. You can go up to 7.
Wait. How can he get points for saying the exact same thing that Shilpa just said?
No, he didn't. No, I didn't say
Nobody's
your
gotten
point.
any points
No,
yet.
this is Shilpa's. This is
I made the
Shilpa's
point.
bonus point. This is
Hey,
Shilpa's bonus point.
Oh, I
Because
see.
you've got
So that's
control of
not
this.
the question.
Don't antagonize. Tony, I think you're doing a great job.
Yes.
Path CR.
Wait, but in a few years,
Jim Brown,
when
don't comment.
we actually have the answers, can we?
We will come back. We will come back. I promise we'll come back. Shilpa, Path CR as an endpoint is an appropriate endpoint for these trials. As a primary endpoint, is Path CR an appropriate endpoint? Yes or no?
No.
Why is that?
Because with immunotherapy, we are bound to see long-term benefit, and even patients who have pathologic downstaging tend to have improvement in overall survival. So I don't think PATH-CR is the best endpoint.
Okay, fabulous. So, Tony, we have
2-1.
2-1. 2?
It's 2 points only.
No, the whole
max.
look is out of 6. Each one's out of 6.
But this one was 2
You
points,
can
no?
score them out of 6.
Oh, 4-2.
4-2. Okay, fabulous. That's not bad. Okay, here we go. We've got the next. We've got the next question is, which medicine named sort of pop band from the UK sung "Friday I'm in Love"?
Cure.
That is the correct answer. That is the correct answer.
If these are all music-based, we're in
6
good shape.
points.
Why was Contact 2 positive when other IO trials in castrate-resistant prostate cancer failed? So this is the press release from Contact 2. What is the trial design of Contact 2, and why was it negative? Why was it positive? Excuse me.
Just don't need a buzz.
Okay. The trial design is metastatic CR.
Yeah, no, you can't do
You can't
that.
actually buzz it, but I take your point.
They won.
Yes, you're good to go.
So the trial design is metastatic CRPC patients who have had only one androgen receptor inhibitor in the CRPC space and have extrapelvic disease and measurable disease, considered high risk, and they're randomized to cabozantinib and atezolizumab versus the second-line ARI.
So the second NHA. And why was this positive while other trials were negative?
That answer sounded rehearsed.
We have this trial at our
I'm
site.
calling a quiz show scenario.
Shilpa, why was this immune therapy study where other trials, such as enzalutamide plus or minus, so enzalutamide plus or minus atezolizumab has a ratio of 1.1 for overall survival, and essentially a hazard ratio of 1.0 for PFS. And here we have now for the first time, well, we have a series of other trials.
Studies.
Why is this positive where the other ones are negative?
Without knowing the details, I think it's the agent they're using in this cabozantinib and atezolizumab combination. Cabozantinib has shown activity in prostate cancer before, and I think just mechanistically the combination makes sense with the mechanism of action. But compared to the other trials.
So the last point before we come on to the second last point is was the control arm appropriate, and what does a clinically meaningful positive trial look like?
The control arm in this case was, again, the discussion we had this morning, whether chemotherapy should be allowed, and I think all these trials are basically in the same theme. I wish there was a chemotherapy allowed on this, but it was not, and I think it was appropriate given that that is probably what's happening in the real world.
We'd give the same answer Michael gave this morning.
Yes.
And then the last question is, could you name 4 previous trials with immune therapy that have been negative? I could say negative or even positive. There's a positive trial kicking out there.
Well, there were 2 Pembro trials at ESMO. I'm hoping you know the details, Shilpa.
The
Not
keynote.
remembering right.
I'm going to hand this over to the other team, if I may.
Yeah.
So here we go. So Mike, I want 2 or 3 questions from your team, if I can. I'd like to know, what does a clinically meaningful positive trial look like? Do you need to have OS for an immune therapy trial? What does a clinically meaningful trial look like? Do you need OS with immune therapy? And then, or is PFS enough? And then name 4 previous immune therapy studies for prostate cancer.
Are we allowed to answer?
Yes.
Okay. So I think for...
Mike, can I ask a question beforehand?
Yeah.
What's this activity of single agent? Because I remember those bone scans all going normal with single agent cabozantinib. What's the activity of single agent cabozantinib in this disease? And should have this trial had a third arm of NHA versus cabozantinib as a single agent to identify the component parts?
Cabo was unsuccessful in demonstrating a benefit in 2 studies, one of which had an OS primary endpoint and the other which had a quality of life endpoint.
But PFS was positive.
But PFS was positive, yeah.
So you've hit PFS, and here we have now you've said before that PFS is enough to get approval. So
Yeah, but
you
I
have
said
to be
it-
consistent in the previous session.
I was very careful about how I answered that question,
Yeah.
unlike the question that you just asked. So I said that PFS was qualified as a
Yes.
biomarker for OS in specific contexts.
Yes.
This is not one of them.
Right.
So I would not just presume that PFS is a substitute for OS in this situation. And in those circumstances, you had OS for those drugs. You don't have OS for this drug. In fact, there's reason to question that RPFS is a good surrogate for OS in this context, because you already do have a trial in which it hit PFS but didn't hit OS.
But
So the
can
mechanism of action you think is relevant to the endpoint?
Yeah.
I have a question to that.
Well, okay, Shilpa, I think that's reasonable.
Those trials, the one with single-agent cabozantinib, were almost 80 years ago when we did not have these life-prolonging therapies available. Even abiraterone was not approved. So I think at the time, OS was a very unrealistic endpoint because subsequently abiraterone became available. But in today's era, when all other trials are using RPFS as primary endpoint, I don't see why this one shouldn't.
Well, that could have been part of your answer as well, that this was an earlier disease
You
population.
should not get
than
extra
those.
points for that. She just
No, I agree.
volunteered, just to be clear.
Yeah. No,
Mike,
I'm on your side.
So your point
Not
here,
really.
what does a clinically meaningful positive trial look like? What does a practice-changing trial? Do you have to have OS?
I think for a novel pair like this, in which you have so much data that is negative, that you should have a positive OS readout.
Is there a rationale why this would be positive and a Tezo plus Enza would be negative? Is there a rationale for it?
I'm not sure we understand the rationale for most positive drugs, right, where we can say
Markov
we
protein.
understand. I mean, the data are what the data are, right?
Well,
If there's a rationale for the data, that would be great, but I can't argue with the press release that it's a positive trial.
Name 4 previous immune therapy trials.
We could name them by the drugs, but do you want their monikers?
Just as
like
best you can,
chemo?
just as best you can.
All right, so we have an ipi-nivo drug with
Yeah.
trial. We have a Pembro trial.
Yeah.
We have, what was the other one? It was
We have 2 Pembro
two Pembro
trials.
trials.
And these are Pembro plus Enza.
Enza, yeah.
And there was also a
And
Pembro plus
Pembro dosing.
Taxol.
Yeah.
And Pembro plus olaparib.
And Pembro plus olaparib. So I think the story is that there have actually been combination trials with PARP inhibition, chemotherapy, and NHAs, all of which to date have been negative, and therefore it is a bit of a surprise
It is.
that this is positive, and we obviously need to look at the data, and it sounds to me like we're not clear whether or not we need OS. Is that fair?
I think that's fair, yeah.
Fabulous.
But if it is positive, I think that we need to really understand why the reason is so that we could leverage it in a future studies.
Okay,
It's probably like the cisplatin or prostate cancer.
I think it probably is. We've got the
That
next.
should be a mark.
We've got the next question. Who coined the phrase "treatment-free survival" for ipi/nivo in renal cancer? And what?
They buzz. You
No,
can't
what's the
complete
answer?
question.
What's the answer?
Well, Meredith Reagan and Dr. David McDermott coined the phrase treatment-free survival.
I think that's good.
No.
I think it's good.
You were going to ask a second part.
You
to
missed
this?
Well,
one.
there is a second part of the question, which is strictly speaking is true.
This whole
but-
thing is fixed. I
Yeah.
just-
Okay.
I-
Yeah. And what does it mean?
Oh, well, there are patients who are treated with ipilimumab, nivolumab on 214 who could come off of immunotherapy and have time off of treatment. And so they quantified all the treatment-free times intervals. And they also did it by patients who had adverse event-free survival times. So it's a really nice analysis of 214.
Lose a mark for that last bit. Otherwise, that's.
Do not
That's an
compliment the other
editorial
team.
comment.
Volrustomig in RCC. This was presented at ESMO this year.
I think it's a buzzer. It's there.
It's a first-line clear cell renal cancer study. How does it work, and what does the activity look like?
This is a bispecific molecule targeting
Oh, that's very good.
CTLA-4
Very good.
and PD-1. And so this is a AstraZeneca drug that's currently, so Martin Voss presented this at ESMO and showed some activity.
What was the
Safety.
activity?
Oh gosh, I don't remember the response rate. I think 20%.
We're going to pull it over to the other side. So do you know the response rate, and can you talk about the toxicity? And I'm looking for grade 3 or 4 adverse events.
Response rate, I think, was ipi/nivo, like, it was like 45%, 47%.
You're going for 45? Okay.
Yeah.
And what about grade 3
I'm
or 4?
trying to read your eyes.
What about grade 3 or 4?
Is it 45?
Unfair.
I think it was 40-something%. Yeah.
40 something. And what about the toxicity? Grade 3 or 4 tox? Is
Like
it better, the same, or worse than ipi/nivo? On indirect comparison.
I think it's. You think it was worse? Oh, okay. We say worse.
Better.
We've got better here, and I think it is better. So it's 45% response rate. You're bang on. Right, bang on. 2 cohorts. Dosing doesn't seem to be an issue.
Yeah, 4-2.
Oh, we haven't finished quite yet, Tony. But we'll
What? You're asking him grade 2? What else?
So here's the toxicity for those who are interested. You can see the grade 3 or 4 toxicity, not too bad. But actually, I think that transaminitis is a bit of concern to me. 10%.
So worse.
10%. I don't know. I think you get 10% transaminitis with ipi/nivo. I can't remember the detail of that. I think the ipi/nivo grade 3 or 4 tox in 214 is slightly higher than that. Sorry, lower than that. It's 62%. It's lower than that. Who said lower? Was you lower?
No, yeah, we did.
Yeah,
So,
we said higher with this.
so it's a split for New York.
Can we get a playback on that one?
Yeah. So, Tony, could you mark them, please?
3-3. I'm gonna.
3-3. Okay, fabulous. Where we go? So I think that was all around pretty good. When was abiraterone? Which year was abiraterone discovered? For the nearest 5 years.
Oh, discovered.
Yes.
A long time ago.
Sure.
2011.
Oh no.
Grown.
So do we get points if we get closer to
No,
it?
you don't. It's just your question. You've got it right. It actually was discovered at the ICR many years ago in the early 1990s and sat on the shelf as a drug for years and years, and then was developed, as you know, from there. So early 1990s from London. Here we go. We've got a next question here. This is match the biomarkers with the bar allocated in the color of clear cell renal cancer. So essentially, the longer the bar, this is this is clear cell renal cancer. The longer the bar, the more mature the biomarker data. The shorter the bar, totally exploratory. So the bottom one is just retrospective exploratory from phase 2. And the longest bar is they've actually been prospectively tested in real time. And here you've got the 4 colors, more promising, less promising. So,
Yeah, you have to.
so you've got to, so what's the first bar at the top? You don't need a buzz, you're good to go now.
We don't need to vote.
The first bar at the top.
PD-1.
PD-L1.
And what color have you got on that? Is it dark red, light green,
Red.
red,
Yes,
Red is less
red.
dark red, or light red?
Dark red.
Right, but it's
Dark red, okay. And what about the code below it, TMB?
TMB is in that like middle, like not as long, the middle medium call.
Okay, so you work the, so the T, so it's the hasn't gone all the way. So the TMB is the third one down. And what color is TMB?
Yellowish.
Yellowish.
In prospective testing is primary. That could be a study that's ongoing.
Ongoing study testing it, prospective.
Like one that
Yes.
is being run by.
Yes.
Just clarifying.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So RNA signatures are the one
Okay.
on top of that.
So what about RNA signatures? Which one's that?
It's the second to the top.
Second to top. So the top one is PDL1 and it's dark red. The one below it is RNA signatures. What color is that?
Promising.
Promising, light green. Below it, you put TMB, and you've put that as light green as well. And then the bottom one, you must be there for ctDNA. What color is ctDNA?
Light green.
Is TMB promising in RCC?
Oh, we're talking about ctDNA at the
Yeah,
bottom.
but we already did TMB. Is TMB promising?
TMB.
And
I
TMB.
said TMB was yellowish.
Yellowish, okay.
Yeah.
So what is your ctDNA at the bottom? What color is that?
Light green. What do you think? Anything exploratory is light green.
Lightly promising. Okay, we're going to pass it over to the other side. Do you want to actually question any of their answers to get bonus points?
Could you just summarize?
So I can summarize, yeah. So the top one is the longest one is PDL1,
Yeah.
and they've put that as red. Below that is the RNA signature, which they've put as light green. Below that is tumor mutational burden that they put as yellow, and at the bottom they've put ctDNA as light green. You can challenge them on one or more of those to get points.
Would you flip ctDNA
I
and
mean,
TMB?
the RNA signatures are being prospectively tested.
All of these enrich for
We're going to have to go along, boys.
All
So
right,
go.
David's going to answer for us.
Far away.
So we're going to say for the first two, they shouldn't be red or pink because they enrich for response. They can't be used as predictive biomarkers.
Yes.
But they certainly enrich for response in
Yes.
prospective.
So you don't think
randomized
PDL1's red, you think it's light green?
Yeah.
Okay, fine. And what about TMB?
Which one it is? I think we thought that ctDNA was probably the third bar. Is that what we said? And the TMB was the first, or the lowest bar.
Well, David, you did the TMB study, that Nature Medicine thing. It had TMB.
I'm just telling. I understand, but that's what we said.
You take a horse to water. You take a horse to water. It's your Nature Medicine.
No, first of all, that's what I said over here, and Brian said.
Okay, we're going to have to keep going. We're going to have to keep going. The
Right?
bottom line
No,
is TMB is red. It doesn't work.
wait.
TMB is low in renal cancer.
Do you have a slide with
Yeah. Okay. but
Well, no, I don't. I'm going to tell you what the answers now. Here we go. We're going to tell you the answers now.
We can't let that slide.
Yes.
You just said I didn't read my own paper.
No, you wrote your own paper.
I
You didn't just
understand.
read it. You wrote it.
You don't have to read it.
But Shilpa and I had the right order, and Brian overruled us. Just to be clear.
So if it goes wrong, you lose by a point. It's Brian's fault. So here we go.
I think the team is
It
disintegrated.
comes back to your team again, because Tian, you got it right originally. What are the names of these two prospective studies, and which biomarkers do they explore, and which one of the two will stand the test of time?
The name is on there.
That one's
I can
optic
read
RCC.
So optic, that's great. What about the right-hand one?
That's 2 points right there.
What about the right-hand one?
What is that right here? You know, David?
That one is. Is that pedigree? No.
Oh,
This is
No.
come
this is
on.
a French.
French study.
This is the French study. Oh.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Self and misspelled.
Okay, I'm going to move it over.
ahead.
Did it come to this side? Did this side know the answer to the second question? Which study is that right-hand study?
Do you know, Brian?
I don't know.
Is
All right,
the
you
CARE
know the
study?
It is CARE. It's the CARE-1 trial. It's the CARE-1 trial. Okay. Now, which biomarkers do they explore?
Well, it's on the slide.
PD-01.
Yeah, that's slightly embarrassing. It's not a perfect question. I didn't say all the questions. I never said all the questions were perfect. I never said that.
Optic is the RNA signature.
Okay. And
the other
which
one's
one will
PD-L1.
stand the test of time? Which one is more likely to be positive? And why?
Optic RCC.
And why is that?
Because it's based on data from a paper that David McDermott might have read.
I did read that paper.
So you feel RNA signatures are more promising than PD-L1 as a biomarker?
In kidney cancer, I did.
I think they're both equally promising. Do you feel RNA signatures or PD-L1 is more promising as a biomarker?
I think we'd say RNA signatures.
But what's the problem with RNA signature sequencing, Ryan?
It's more complicated to do, right?
And
it's
how
more cumbersome and more expensive.
And how
takes more
reliable
time.
is it? And how can you allocate patients into the risk groups accurately?
We'll find out. I don't think we know.
Okay. Tony, we've got
Yeah,
a mark
5-1.
to which team?
5-1. I mean, you guys did not care one? You called it that? No, 5-1.
Oh, 5 to
No, we
us.
got,
Yeah,
we
5
got
to
all
you.
the others.
That's
Okay.
the
We
fair.
totally agree.
Totally rigged.
Yeah, life is not
5-1,
fair. Yeah.
Okay, fine, I agree. I hand it over.
No. Team Cleveland rocking it.
5-1. Okay, we're going to go along. So, the next question is which medieval civilization inspired the term Bluetooth?
Which what?
Which medieval civilization inspired the term Bluetooth?
Luton?
Okay, if we're not going to answer that one, I've got another.
We're gonna go with the Vikings.
It was the Vikings.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
Yeah, we should get a lot of points for that. How did you get that?
6-0.
Okay.
0.
Tony, hold it.
Six.
What is this study called, and what did it show?
No, they have control.
Norse.
So this is the North study, and what did it show?
Showed the response rates with Erda plus PD-1 blockade were better than with single-agent Erda.
And do you know how much better?
Better.
What was so Gem Carbo has response rates of 45%. What was single agent Erda and what was Erda plus trilimab?
40% and 65%.
40-65. Okay. And did it show PFS and OS? And what were those results?
It showed a PFS signal and an OS signal.
55-45, so not bad. So it's a small bounce, but no real change in OS, and not a massive difference in PFS, but there is a PFS signal. So at the moment, you're getting these questions absolutely right. The next question, did it lead to anything? And name ongoing randomized trials with FGFR inhibition. So what was the conclusion of this? Is there a EV302 with Erda and citrilimab? Would that be justified with response rates of 55% in FGFR-altered patients? And what is the story of FGF? What is the future of FGFR inhibition, and what are the ongoing trials?
So there's not a frontline study ongoing right now, not a phase 3 study. It would be a consideration. We don't know the response rate of EV-Pembro in patients with FGFR alterations, and we don't know if giving those patients an FGFR inhibitor plus PD-1 blockade might be a better strategy, but from a practical standpoint, it's a challenging study to do. Ongoing randomized studies, the Thor studies, which we saw read out at ESMO.
Anything from your perspective?
Some other FGFR inhibitor studies.
Yeah, there are a lot of FGFR inhibitors, but they're all early on in the.
But randomized. Oh,
So
yes,
ongoing randomized trials, there aren't
Just
any?
the TOR
TAR.
stuff.
Isn't there a TAR randomized trial?
There's
Yeah.
intravesical.
Intravesical.
Yeah.
Oh,
TAR 2-1.
okay, Tony, what do you got?
3-3.
Oh, no, you can't do 3-3, but that was the fantastic Viking answer.
No, that already accounted for. I made it its own question.
can't see the
I just
score.
changed the rules. 26-22.
Okay, we go on. We've got 2 questions left. Okay.
There's a problem with the score.
What?
I tried to keep track of the score, but it's actually the previous question told
Yeah.
me 5-1, correct?
Yeah, no, the score is fine, thank you.
The score is fine. Thank you, Petro. Tony, what is the score? What is the score?
It's going to be tied after this question.
26,
22.
22, which is
Very
fabulous.
close.
Okay, name a Nobel Prize winner. Name a Nobel Prize winner involved in GU-oncology.
Jim Allison. What was the question? Jim Allison.
Nobel Prize winner.
You didn't hear the question. Okay, they didn't hear the question. It's not fair. It's not fair. You didn't hear the question. They weren't ready. They weren't ready. It's not fair.
all right,
Okay.
okay.
In which city is the painting Guernica in?
Go.
It is in Madrid.
We were just there.
Wow.
Just there. ESMO 20. As a bonus point, do you know where
It's a
ESMO
great
2024 is being held?
Barcelona.
Oh,
Fabulous. 25. Fabulous. Do you know where 25 is being held?
Berlin.
Berlin. That's absolutely right.
let's
Okay.
do
Here we go.
2-4.
We have no, wait, Tony, you've got the whole
Why?
question. You haven't quite got
the whole
okay,
thing's right.
here we go.
Like,
Here we go.
This game makes
So we
no
just
sense.
talked about this. This is nutrition impaired.
it's your
What did they test in the biomarker sub-study, and what did it show? So what I'm actually really interested in is, they looked at the intensity in
What are you
different
telling
ways.
us the answer for?
Okay.
Dr. Morris has all the
I don't want to
answers.
interrupt.
In case
Go
Michael
right
didn't
ahead.
know, which he clearly does.
No, Mike,
So
go.
what they did was-
What did they do? Tell me.
So this is an interesting history to this. So we were trying to include the Germans in vision because they were so integral to developing the therapy, right? The lutetium wouldn't exist without all the research the Germans did. But it's available there pretty much at will. So they were given a very important sub-study to examine on vision, which was a relationship between the imaging intensity and the outcome of the trial. And imaging intensity does correlate with outcome. And
What type of intensity? They measured
So-
the intensity in different ways.
Yeah, they
and
looked
they
at-
had inconsistent results. What type of intensity?
SUV mean, SUV max.
Which one correlated with survival?
SUV mean is the best correlator with survival. SUV max has a correlation, but it's not quite as good as SUV mean. But on the other hand, SUV max is routinely reported on a routine.
And how do you
report.
calculate SUV mean as opposed to SUV max?
So the SUV mean, you take the aggregate of lesions, you average out the SUV of all of the SUVs of all of the lesions, and you report the mean. But that is a synthetic outcome. You have to calculate it, whereas the SUV max is the highest pixel, the highest lesion.
SUV max is the easiest to measure,
Yeah.
but non-significant. It's SUV mean. What does that mean? Why is this just an inconsistent exploratory analysis, or is this meaningful?
Oh, it is meaningful, yeah.
And why is it meaningful when there are so many significant and aren't significant? Why
Because
is
we are always looking for how to select patients by the features of their tumor and their biology for the right treatment. So you could take this, especially if you can get an SUV mean routinely reported, and select those patients who are most likely to respond to Pluvicto as opposed to, let's say, chemotherapy or some other option in that same space.
what did the bone and liver show?
Boy, how many points are in this
I
question?
think we're up to about 100. 100
What Tony is
what did the-
somehow
Might give you some of
calculating
our
for
points.
What
us.
did
That's
the
a really good
bone?
answer.
What did the bone and liver show?
So patients who have any liver disease do more poorly than patients who do not have liver disease. This was a little confusing in terms of how it was reported, because remember that in vision, patients with PSMA negative disease were disqualified, right? So patients who have even PSMA avid liver disease do more poorly than patients who don't have PSMA avid disease. Patients who have PSMA avid bone disease do better than patients who have PSMA avid visceral disease.
Tony, how many marks for that?
Look, it's not me.
I have a question.
He keeps going.
Are there going to be any melanoma questions?
There are not as many melanoma questions. We had the Bob Marley question at the beginning, which I put in particularly because I thought David would know the answer to that. Okay.
Yeah, 1-5.
1-5. Okay.
27,
So we're on to the
27.
last question.
What a shock.
We're on to the
It's a
last
tie.
question.
It's a
What is
tie.
this? Is the last question. How many deaths are there per annum in the United States from prostate cancer for nearest 5,000? For nearest 10,000? How many deaths
from
per
prostate
year
In the United
cancer
States.
in the United States?
I have no idea.
31,500.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A seer diagrams of the Love it.
Seems like a strange thing to be applauding.
Just how many deaths per year of prostate cancer? That's
Okay, here we go. Advanced papillary renal cancer, IMDC risk disease, so intermediate renal cancer, previous therapy. So you've got a whole series of treatment options here. And the first one is no previous treatment. So what's the first line treatment for papillary renal cancer?
Cabozantinib,
Cabozantinib.
based on PEPMET from Dr. Monty Paul in the back.
Yeah, so if you can quote the reason why and the data support you, prior adjuvant immune therapy 9 months previously.
Cabozantinib.
Cabozantinib again, based on the same data. Progressive disease on Cabo-Nivo.
Oh, no.
Lenvatinib, pembrolizumab.
Why lenvatinib pembrolizumab?
There is data from a non-clear cell cohort treated with lenvatinib pembrolizumab, mostly based in Memorial Sloan Kettering, but there is disease activity about
You're going to get an opportunity to
42%
appeal.
of objective responses.
MET altered previous sunitinib.
The Samita trial, the savolitinib potentially, but
Is that
cabozantinib would have activity as well. No, I don't think savolitinib is available, but the Samita trial is ongoing.
Okay, and previous disease on sunitinib. Sorry, progressive disease on sunitinib, I apologize. So just classic progressive disease on sunitinib, what next?
Cabo or the PAPMET-2 trial.
Cabo.
Yeah.
Okay,
The ongoing
so we're going to hand it
PAPMET-2
over to the
trial.
other team. Tony, you're going to have to mark these two. It's going to be quite close. Wait a second. So here we go. You've got an opportunity to appeal. You've got a lot of cabozantinib in the first three. You've got savolitinib, and then you've got cabozantinib again.
So I'll say, for no previous therapy, I'll say len-pembro, even though Cabo has small randomized data. The single agent, I think it was B61, or the single arm B61 trial showed really high response rates and long PFS.
What was the response rate?
50%, ESMO 2023.
With reference, please.
Lancet Oncology, I think, too.
Okay.
Albige's et
Because
al.
patients aren't cured with single agent
Okay, so
TKI,
you
right?
disagree
So
on the first. Which
I
other ones do you disagree on?
disagree on the second one, adjuvant immune therapy. What was the answer?
It was Cabo again.
No, Pembro then was.
No, they said Cabo.
They said
Oh,
Cabo.
it's a Cabo.
Okay.
Oh, never mind. Then I agree. I thought, yeah.
Okay, what else?
No, I agree. I think progressive disease on Cabo-Nivo, I think it's unexcitingly single agent TKI.
So you agree with them on that?
Well,
No, they said-
Where we
the
said
answer,
len-pembro.
She
They said len-pembro.
which
right, that can't be right.
even though contact
Why can't
03
that be right?
Because Contact 03 said,
Correct.
There's
Forget about
absolutely
it.
no benefit.
Yep.
Okay.
Zero and toxic deaths.
MET alteration, savolitinib, agree with that?
If available, yes.
Wait, this is for people progressing on Cabo-Nivo, not the people who are going on Cabo-Nivo. What
Yeah,
are you going to
thanks.
give them after
IO
Cabo-Nivo?
Yeah,
Okay,
I
so
after-
and what about the last one, progressive disease on sunitinib?
I'd probably give them IO-TKI. I'd probably give them
So there is
Cabo-Nivo.
disagreement. There's more
We don't really have
IO-TKI.
data.
There's more IO-TKI.
We like
here,
hearing patients at this
And
table.
here there's more single agent cabozantinib.
Am I right, David?
Tony, can we get a mark, please?
4-2.
4-2.
I didn't like IO after IO.
What's the final score?
31-29. New York Blues. Go Cleveland!
now we're going to carry Shilpa off the field on our shoulders.
I think we're done. Thank you very much. Thank you both teams.